Hi, I'm Kelsey from Coaching with Kelsey, and today I want to talk to you about being the mediator between your mind and your body. A mediator is someone who helps two people who are in conflict communicate. Now, this is a little bit meta because right now, in this situation, you will be the mediator, you will be the mind, and you will be the body all at once. But I feel that it helps to visualize it in this way. Let's talk about some qualities that are important to have as a mediator, even if the mediation is between you and you and you. Okay, so it's important to be impartial, or another way of putting this that is the way I usually talk about it with my clients is to be neutral, to step into the position of the observer and just to simply observe the facts of the situation. So that's one quality. Another quality would be perceptiveness, or another way I think you could put this is simply curiosity. To be curious about what the people you're mediating between are feeling, expressing, what you think that they must need, what are things that are under the surface. And in this case, it's going to be curiosity about what it is that your body needs that perhaps it's not able to express. What is it that mentally your mind needs, and perhaps it's reactive in a certain way because it's not getting what it needs. Another quality would be trustworthiness. In this case, it would be more like self-trust. You have to be able to trust in yourself that this mediation, this conversation you have between these different sides of yourself is worthwhile, important, necessary, and that you're capable of having it. And then finally, dedication, that this is important to you, that you want to see it through to the end, even if it's rocky, even if the first time you start to have this conversation with yourself between your sort of mind and your body, that even if things don't work out perfectly right away, that you are dedicated to continuing to have the conversation. So next, I want to talk about communication styles. And I want us to imagine that if the body or the mind were a person, what kind of communication style do you think they would have? So maybe your interpretation of that will be different than mine, because obviously my experience of my body and my mind are different. But this is sort of what I came up with. I think that the body would be more of a passive communicator. When I think of the body as a passive communicator, I'm thinking a lot about quiet communication, subtle communication, the kind of communication that perhaps it is often overlooked when the other party is not aware or vigilant of it. And the body, I think, with its passive communication, sometimes doesn't express its needs in an overt way until there's repercussions. Like, for example, if we are very busy and we don't notice our hunger signals, then perhaps we crash later on because we don't have enough energy, because we forgot to pay attention to our body's subtle communication that we needed to eat. So that's kind of an example. So I would say that is my interpretation of the body as a passive communicator. So think about what kind of communicator your body is. Now, when I think of my mind as a communicator, I was leaning more towards an aggressive communication style. My mind is very vocal. You know, for all of us, there's at least 60,000 thoughts a day going through our brain, so it's very quick, fast-paced, and it's very active, always moving, always on the go. It wants to be in charge. My brain, it always thinks it's right. And it often is trying to solve for a problem rather than to simply listen. And now you, as the mediator, what kind of communicator are you going to show up as for this? And my thought is the best type of communication for the mediator is to be assertive. So an assertive communicator expresses their own needs, thoughts, feelings, desires, but also continues to take into consideration the thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires of the other parties involved. It's more balanced, and I think that's important when you are looking at what it is that your mind needs and what it is that your body needs, and how can we make these two things work together. Next, we want to figure out what are the wants and needs of each individual, in this case, the body and the mind. You might have different answers than me, so think about what your body and your mind need. And I'll give you the example of what I came up with. My body needs to be respected. It needs to be loved unconditionally, and it needs its basic needs met, which means it needs to be well rested, it needs to be nourished by food, and it needs to experience joyful movement. Now, what the mind wants can feel a little more complicated because the mind often thinks what it wants is external. So we have to figure out what is the internal part of the external want. And I'm going to explain that a little bit better, I hope. So I'm going to use an example that frames this potential conflict between the mind and the body. So, perhaps what the mind thinks it wants is for the body to be different than it is. Examples of this could be that the mind thinks the body should be smaller. Let's just use that, okay? Why does the mind want the body to be smaller? Well, it wants that because it thinks it will feel better. So you have to ask yourself, how do you think you would feel if your mind got the thing it thinks it wants? I hope that makes sense. So, example, the mind thinks it wants the body to change and to be smaller because what it thinks it will get from that is safety, respect, and to feel good. So those are the actual things that the mind wants. The mind wants to be safe, it wants to feel stable, and it wants to feel better. In a lot of ways, the body and the mind want virtually the same things. They want to be loved, respected, and to feel safe. So what is the true conflict? In the situation I have outlined, and again, yours can look different, mine is that the body doesn't feel heard and the mind blames the body for what it does not have. And I want to remind you that as mediator, these are neutral things, okay? It might seem like the mind, being the aggressive communicator, is the one who is at fault, but in this situation, no one is at fault, right? The mind is reactive in a certain way. What it wants is to feel safe, and it's reacting because often it doesn't feel safe, and we can have compassion for that. It's perhaps not acting out in a way that is loving and respectful, but that's partly because what it needs is love and respect. So again, we are the assertive communicator, and we pay attention to both what we need as a whole and also what the individual mind and body needs as well. In other words, as mediator, as a whole person, what we want and need is for these two parts of ourselves to be more in tandem and less in conflict. So we need to look at what the needs are of the individual mind and body, and the mind still needs love and compassion, even if you think it has behaved perhaps in a negative way, if that makes sense. And the same for your body as well. I hope that you'll try this exercise out and let me know how it goes for you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we really want to facilitate is understanding of the self and breeding better communication with the self. And I think that this is an exercise that can help open us up to that vulnerability and also that self-compassion, which can be hard to be in touch with. If this video resonates with you, I hope you'll consider signing up for a free consultation with me. We can explore deeper your personal experience with your self-image or your body image, both, and you can see if you are a good fit for my 8-week program. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.